Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey there, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. We are really happy to have you guys here today, and we hoped you joined us last week for the episode with Kelly Sisson, where we talked about thriving, not just surviving in private practice. So we took a step back, and this was more of a personal story and personal journey, really providing hope, encouragement, and inspiration. So we hope that you join us for that if you haven't already. Today, our guest is Barbara Griswold, licensed marriage and family therapist. And today we're talking about a topic that you all requested, because we love to poll you guys, and we really appreciate you guys voting when we throw some topics out there, because we want to deliver what it is that you most want. So today's topic is what's missing from your progress notes. So we're going to get into those things you all love the most, not progress notes, but they are very important. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a quick moment to say, welcome to our new guest. You are part of our Startup Nation family. We have a special gift for you, and that is our A to Z cheat sheet, the essentials for building and growing your dream practice. Go over to privatepracticestartup.com, head over to the resources tab, and there you will see it hanging out there. Go ahead and enter your name and email. And not only will you get the A to Z cheat sheet, but you will also get the 5 days of practice building emails, because we're really here to support you along your private practice journey wherever you are. So let's talk a little bit about Barbara. So Barbara has been interviewed by National Public Radio, Morning Edition, and her articles have appeared in the Psychotherapy Networker and the Therapist magazines. While she has a private practice therapy in San Jose, California, her true passion is leading live workshops and webinars, helping therapists understand the mysterious world of insurance and billing, and teaching them how to write better progress notes. She provides consultations to therapists nationwide on essential business topics they didn't learn in grad school, including insurance, writing quick but thorough notes, and building a thriving practice. Welcome, Barbara.
Thanks. I'm delighted to be here.
We are delighted to have you. So yeah, progress notes.
Progress notes. Every therapist's favorite thing.
How did you get
it's such a pain. It's such a pain point for people in practice. I mean, and I actually recently did a survey of 500 therapists, and 5% said that they felt confident in their, notes if they were ever to be requested. That's a really low portion, and that's what. I think 25% said, well, maybe I'm okay. So we're talking most people out there. So if you're one of those folks listening and you're thinking, my notes, I really don't feel confident, you are not alone. So don't feel bad. Don't feel ashamed. But this is the time where, hopefully by the end of our talk today, maybe you'll think about making some changes and feeling better about them.
So I'm just curious, how did you fall in love with this topic?
Well, like anything in my life, the things I've fallen in love with have come completely unexpectedly, including my husband. But I opened my practice 30 years ago. I hate to admit that. And started to get involved with all the insurance plans I could possibly get involved with to build my practice. And then it started happening that people started coming to me and saying, how do you fill out this form and that form? And so then I started to become kind of the go-to insurance person in my building, and then got kind of known out there that, people kind of know, go to Barbara if you have insurance questions. And then I gave my first workshop 15 years ago, and 100 people showed up. And this was before the internet. We didn't even do any internet. Not it was before the internet, but we didn't do any internet advertising. And there was just this amazing need out there for insurance training. And then as I was kind of giving talks all around about insurance, I started to do workshops. People were calling me up and saying, I've gotten a request for my records and I don't keep progress notes and I don't know what's supposed to be in them. And it became this now, so many people were calling me panicked because they're getting records requests. This is happening more and more out there. And so I decided, hey, maybe I need to kind of go off on a kind of side tangent here. After writing my book on insurance, I decided maybe I need to tell people what kind of in a preemptive way what's supposed to be in your progress notes. And that way, if you do get a request for your records, you're set, you're confident, you don't have that feeling of panic.
Interesting. When I heard you say that people are like, oh, I don't keep progress notes, like that, like is horrifying to me. Like, yeah,
2% of people in my survey, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's still people out there who don't keep them, and in fact defended it in their comments. Said, yeah, and we can talk about some of the reasons why they kind of defend no notes.
I was actually talking to a therapist the other day, and they said, oh, I just started running some groups, and I love it because I have all of these people coming, and I'm making more money, and I don't have to write notes anymore. And I was like, wait, what? Where did you get the memo that you don't have to write notes? These are still clients that you're seeing for a session. You got to write notes. And they were like, what? Thank goodness you told me. Apparently, sometimes, people just don't realize.
Well, a lot of people out there have gotten bad advice about notes. I hear this all the time, like, well, my supervisor told me X, or my colleague in the next office told me Y. And it's just like, oh, I just want to, no, don't listen to your colleague or your supervisor sometimes on certain issues. So,
there seems to be a huge missing. I mean, I don't remember writing assessments in school, treatment plans, progress notes. Right. I don't remember that. And then you go into work and they expect that you know how to do this. And then, they just, most people going into community mental health, right? Then it's, high volume of clients, hurry, do the work, and they're really not checking the quality. I remember It took me about 2 years when I was a therapist, and one of my supervisors, she had this really awesome formula on how to write treatment plans, and it's something that I've followed ever since. And it was just easy, but no one sat down and talked to me about how to write objectives and measure them, and I didn't know any of that. So
right.
Yeah. So let's dive into your topic. Let's talk about some of the things that are missing in progress notes.
Well, first I wanted to talk about, why don't we keep better notes? I mean, it kind of comes down to about 5 or 6 things that I always hear time and time again, and they're so common. First, of course, is the time issue. I mean, yes, they're a big time suck. There's no way around it. But one of the things I try to work with people is how to do quick notes that summarize a 50 or 60-minute session. It is a skill, but it's something you can build. But what happens is we don't write them, and then we fall further and further and further behind. And people come to me and say, I haven't written them for the last month, and now I don't know whether to write today's notes or try to remember a month ago, and then they start piling up, and it becomes a huge stressor in these therapists' lives, and you're already so busy, and you're already dealing with a lot of stress in our personal lives and our professional lives, and the secret is, keeping on top of notes is just a real stressor, so we don't write very good notes sometimes, either because we're writing them so far after the session or because we're trying to speed through them so quickly. The other thing, obviously, is that we weren't taught what to write in them. If you know what to write and how to write it quickly, then it doesn't become a pain point. Another issue is a lot of people harbor under the impression, and this is what I was taught 20, 30 years ago, the less you write, the better, right? This is a really common one that I hear in my workshops every day. I heard just this weekend that we need to protect our clients by writing less in their notes or not keeping notes at all, that the things we say can be used against them. And while that's very understandable, therapists don't understand all the ways that notes can help a client or protect you. And that's something that, we can talk more about. But other therapists are saying, my memory is great, I don't need them. Well, they're not for you. They're a medical record. They're a medical record. I mean, of course they are for you to help you remember the sessions and to do better, give better care. But you are creating a medical record for the client. I mean, how would you feel if you went into your primary healthcare provider and they didn't keep notes from one session to another, so that a year later you said, hey, I want my record. They're like, yeah, I didn't keep record of any visit you had for all the 20 times you came in here. That's unprofessional and it's illegal in most states. And, your licensing board And then if a client comes in and complains about you and says, hey, she didn't provide services, or she didn't provide the right services, or she didn't respond appropriately to my issue, you have absolutely no documentation to back up what service you provided. So the medical record has to be a record of the services you provided in each session, how you responded, was it appropriate to the client's presenting issues. So
yeah, I can only imagine you go to the bank and you deposit $5,000 and you go to retrieve it, and the bank was like, I didn't keep that documentation.
Right, right.
We don't have that.
And the biggest myth I think that's out there is, I don't work with insurance, so I don't need to keep good progress notes, or I don't have to keep any progress notes. And it has nothing to do with insurance. I tell people all the time, you should keep the same progress note whether your client is paying by cash, check, insurance. This has nothing to do with how they're paying. Now, yes, insurance may have more tendency to perhaps look into your notes, or you might need that information for a treatment review down the line. But there are so many other reasons why your notes could be requested. I had one client who I had 2 years of notes that were requested for a disability. Because my notes were so specific and had very good documentation of all his impairment and his symptoms and the severity and the duration over the year, he was able to get, permanent disability, actually. And his psychiatrist had kept crappy notes, and he was turned down initially due to her notes, because her notes were so, superficial. So wow. You might be the difference between one of your clients getting well-deserved disability or being able to get coverage through insurance for many, many more sessions, and it may all be based on your notes. So there's so many things riding on your notes. They're just, we kind of are in denial about it. We think it's just like our little private journal about our thoughts and feelings or about what the client's working on.
Before we go further, let's just take a quick break for our sponsor. The work you do as a therapist is important, and your private practice deserves the best website possible to allow you to see more clients. As an industry-leading company that makes marketing simple for therapists, Brighter Vision understands exactly what it takes to help your practice grow to new heights this year. Brighter Vision's team of developers will work with you to first understand your business and what makes it unique, then use this information to build you a website centered around attracting and retaining your ideal client. Better yet, there's never been a more affordable time to get the website your practice deserves. During the entire month of January, Brighter Vision is running its biggest sale of the year. Until the end of the month, pay no setup fees and get your entire first year for just $49 a month. That's a savings of over $200 on your first year with Brighter Vision. To take advantage of this offer, simply go to brightervision.com/PPS. Again, that's brightervision.com/PPS as in private practice startup.
If you're in private practice, you wear a lot of hats. And some of those hats are totally great, but some, like filing taxes and running payroll, for example, not so great. That's where Gusto comes in. They make payroll, taxes, and HR actually easy for small businesses like your private practice. Fast, simple payroll processing and benefits and expert HR support all in one place. Gusto automatically pays and files your federal, state, and local taxes so you don't have to worry about it. Plus, they make it easy for you to add on health benefits and even 401ks for you and your team. Let them wear one of your many hats. You have so many better things to do with your time. Listeners get 3 months free when they run their first payroll. Try a demo and see for yourself at gusto.com/PPS. That's gusto.com/PPS.
Go ahead, Kate. You were about to say something.
I was about to say the exact same thing, that we're going to take a sponsor break, but you just said that. And I'd love to know, Barbara, what exactly needs to be in the progress notes?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to go to the 5 things that I feel like are often missed out? Okay. I think people understand if most people cover the topics discussed, they might say, that they came in and they discussed this thing and this thing and this thing. They don't often get it down into, well, what were the symptoms that are underlying those topics? So if somebody's coming in and saying that they're fighting with their boyfriend, are they having anxiety about that? Are they having depression about that? Are they losing sleep? So you want the impairment. Like, what is how is that causing a problem in their life? Are they having difficulty with self-care? Are they, is it causing financial problems? Is it occupational problems, not functioning well at work? So these are the things that you kind of need to be collecting a little more data points on. Another kind of surprising one that's become, well, I don't know, surprising, but a new one that's kind of come into the field recently is session start and stop times. This has become a really big issue lately because we didn't usually capture that in the chart in terms of, we might put a 50-minute session or 60-minute session, but we didn't usually put from 105 to 155. And that's what we need to do from now on, because more and more there's a kind of billing audits. And in your progress notes, you're backing up how long exactly the session was so that it matches the amount that you're billing for. And it's a way of backing up, again, your records, but also just, maybe a client comes 15 minutes late. You can't legally bill for a 60-minute session if they only had a 45-minute session, right? So they want to see exactly the length of session. So that's a new one, kind of.
That's really interesting to hear that wasn't like a big deal before. One of the things when I was in management and leadership is I would always talk about, like critical incidences, right? It's important to know the stop and start time of any interaction with a client, because God forbid a critical incident happens or they're suicidal. If you don't have accurate times, and you know what I mean? So, we always train on the importance of the timing being very accurate. So that's interesting to hear that's evolved.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of people have software programs that just enter 45 minutes, the CPT code, 45-minute session or 60-minute session, so it doesn't actually have start and stop times. And people are like, oh no, what do I do? And I'm like, just write it in the progress note. And, when insurance plans see, sometimes your session starts at 105, sometimes it starts at 110. It's also more believable, right? If every time they see you say 1 o'clock to 1:55, they're like, is that really the case, or are you just writing that in? So it's, the more you capture reality, obviously, the more believable your chart is. Other things we're talking about, interventions. I can't tell you how many times I see a note that doesn't have anything about the therapist in it. So it'll be client discussed, blah, 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 and client said this about that. And then, that's the end of the note. And I'll be like, well, what did you do about that? This is supposed to be a record of medical service provided. Keep coming back to that sentence. What service did you provide? And it could just be an intervention that you help the client identify their cognitive distortions, or you recommended that they go to mindfulness-based stress reduction classes, or you referred them to a medication evaluation. It can be all kinds of things that you did in session or homework that you gave them, or what are they going to do before next time. But if you don't have any record of what you did, the client can later come back and complain and say, she didn't do anything, and you have no defense.
And your note says so.
Your note says so too, right? And of course, later you're on the stand saying, well, I did this and this. And we're like, well, if you really did that, there's that old phrase, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. I was just thinking about that. You pulled it all out of my mind.
It's really on you to document what happens in the session. And an offshoot of that is that whenever anything unusual happens in the session, like different than normal, or when the client appears different, that's when you document that. If they ask you something that's, hey, can we do a reduced fee? Boom, I'm going to be documenting a lot of that conversation. Why do they want it? What did I say about that? What fee did we agree to? When did we agree to reevaluate it? It could be administrative like that, or it could be clinical. I had one client come in and say, can I pay you in tomatoes instead of my co-payment? That's going to be documented.
Well, that really happened?
Yes, I really love tomatoes, but I'm not going to accept, you can't do those kind of things, but you have to document, client said this. Why did I say I wouldn't accept tomatoes? How did the client react to that? So, a lot of anything that's a little unusual, you want to document because you don't know how it's going to blow up later or be significant later. A lot of therapists tell me, well, I didn't document it because I didn't think it was significant. And I think to myself, yeah, I probably over-document because I've been on the state ethics committee and I saw the kind of things that people, that that clients brought in and complained about their therapists about, and how often the therapist did not have proper documentation to be able to say how they handled something, or just how the sessions were unwinding. And, if the client was having an issue, was that reflected in any way in the documentation?
So you got to share with us like some of the top ones that you've heard. We can't step over that. We got to know.
You mean like that were brought to the ethics committee?
Yeah. Or some of the crazy outlandish things?
Here's an area that people don't realize how big it is, but a couple of the cases involved abandonment. And in each case, the therapist felt like they handled an ending, a term, somebody either backed out of treatment, or they felt like this person was done, or they had to leave, the therapist had to leave treatment. So from the therapist's point of view, it was handled fine. From the client's point of view, they were abandoned. And I think we don't realize how sensitive some of our clients are to abandonment, and how they will misinterpret, any kind of backing away. So you have to handle referrals, coordination of care, but particularly endings really carefully, and you have to document everything. So when I refer to somebody, I document all my conversations to the client about, why I'm making that referral. I document all the referrals so that keep a copy of the referrals in the chart. I might send an email to the client and say, here's why I'm making this referral, or, hey, you didn't come back after the last 3 sessions, and so we're ending. I might send a letter with that, and here are some referrals. So just like do extra, I would say, around endings, because you don't realize maybe how often clients will then turn around and say you abandoned them in treatment.
That's interesting to hear that was one of the main ones that would come to the ethics board.
Well, here's what I think happens is they get mad at you. You're going along and you're doing well, and all of a sudden they get mad at you for something. And in this case, it was because you backed away in some manner, or they experienced you as backing away and not being there for them. The other thing that often happens is some of the complaints involved billing. And I don't think that was really, these are things that maybe the client had gone along with, improper billing practices, and they were fine with it as long as this person was treating them. And then when this therapist didn't save their marriage, or they got mad at the therapist, all of a sudden they're like, well, this therapist, they report to did this improper billing practice, or was billing both of our, we were doing couples counselor and was billing counseling and was billing both of our insurance plans for the same session. So that would be fraud. And that was fine with them as long as they were happy with you. And then as soon as they got unhappy with you, they were like, all right, where can we direct our complaint? Right. So
sure. It reminds me of some of my clients. I deal with clients in affair recovery, right? And so a lot of the information comes out when the affair partner is not happy. So yeah, when you're making those, agreements and things like that, as long as the relationship is going okay, it's fine. But when someone's not happy, someone else is going to hear about it for sure.
So it's just so important that just your notes need to just so document why treatment is necessary, particularly if you do work with insurance directly. But even if you don't work with insurance directly, if you give a statement to a client to turn into their insurance, you have to remember that opens the door for the insurance plan to review your treatment. And if you don't have lots of documentation saying why this person is in treatment and why they need treatment more than that they're wanting to do personal growth work, the insurance plan might not cover it, and that client might drop out because they don't have coverage. So it really is in your hands. I think that's the walk away. I'm going to anticipate your question, which is the walk away is that your notes are far more important than you think they are, and that you should always write them as if an insurance plan's reviewing them, or if the client is reviewing them. You have to remember the client can at any time say, "I'd like my records, please. I'm going to another professional." And do you want to currently, if you think about that, how comfortable do you feel with your clients picking up their records and walking away with them? One of the things I tell people all the time is don't write anything that you that is negative about your client. Like, I never use words like client became hostile or client is, antagonistic or whatever. I might describe like a journalist. I always say, write like a journalist is in the room. So client raised her voice, or client said she was angry at me for, charging her a late fee, or a missed session fee, Be documentarians, be journalists, and just describe what happened, but don't use any pejorative language in your notes.
Barbara, one of the things that we find is really like the mindset shift about your paperwork and how you relate to your paperwork. How do you help therapists reframe their relationship with their paperwork?
Yeah, that's a great question. So many people just hate this part. They hate paperwork, and they are always saying to me, it's just part of the job that they hate the most. And for me, I'm a much better clinician when I write good notes. There's a couple ways that happens. Number one, if I have a client coming in and I think to myself, I kind of know what we're going to be talking about, what they talked about last time, but I pull out my notes and they're really good from last week. I'm like always amazed. I'm like, oh, I forgot. That's right. He was working on that. Or, oh, that's right. There's that extra piece I forgot. Or I gave him this assignment. I forgot I had given him. So maybe my memory is just really bad. But it really, when that person comes in, I'm so much more ready, and I'm so much more, it just gives me so much more, flavor of what they're going through, and reminds me about the things that we're working on. And so my treatment is actually better. That's number one. Number two is if they go away from treatment and then come back, they're always so impressed. They're always like, oh, I can't believe you remember that. Because I'll say, like, how's that thing going with your sister? Or, didn't you have a wedding that you were going to with your niece and that you were worried about, and how did you get through that? And they're always like, God, you have such a good memory. And I'm like, no, I don't want to say that, but no, I don't. I actually just have really good notes, and they really help you connect with the clients, and they help you give much better care. So it's not stupid paperwork. If it helps me give better care, then it's very worthwhile.
And I couldn't agree more with you, because there's times like if I don't see a client like every week, I definitely forget. So every other week, and I just quickly look at my notes and I was like, oh yeah, I did forget I assigned that to them. But it also helps provide better care, because you're helping hold them accountable to what they may have said that they were going to do, or what they were going to agree to do. And also too, one of the things that I like about like notes and documentation is, when clients are getting ready to transition or discharge or graduate, I like to walk them through the journey, right? And I like to highlight where they were and the progress they've made. And a lot of times they're like much more astounded, like, wow, oh, that's right, we really did do that. So it's a great, opportunity to utilize that as well, to really help them see their own progress and many other things. So we really appreciate you being here today talking about progress notes, because this is, yes, it's a love-hate relationship for most people, or more hate-hate, I guess. But hopefully with some of Barbara's suggestions and tips, you guys, can apply these things to your notes. And we really invite you just to begin to change your relationship with your notes. And that's really important. And Barbara, you have a giveaway for our audience today. What is that?
Yeah, a lot of times I hear from a therapist, well, you tell me I need to write interventions, but I don't know how to write that. What does that look like? What's an intervention? So I put together a list of sentences that here are some interventions, and it has all kinds, DBT, CBT, EMDR, all kinds of different interventions that are kind of spelled out in the whole sentence. And so it's an interventions list that I hope you find helpful to say, oh, that's the kind of thing I'm supposed to be writing. So
nice.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And you can find the link to that at our show on our show notes page. That information will be right there. So Startup Nation, we hope you guys join us next week as we talk to Julia Harris, and we're going to be talking about what to track. So more about documentation to have a successful private practice. So Julie's actually an accountant and the owner of Green Oak Accounting. I love talking taxes and accounting, so I hope you guys will join us for that episode, because just like we're talking about in today's episode, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. Well, if you're not tracking it, you can't change it or improve it.
Yes, very well said. And also, let's take a moment for our Startup Nation superhero shout out. This comes from Brandon Santan. We actually had him as a guest on our podcast recently, so it's so cool to see his review here. We have, he says, I'm thankful to have come across Kate and Katie and the Private Practice Startup. I've enjoyed their thorough resources about starting and growing a private practice. They have some great lessons to share from their own experiences, so who better to listen to than those who have been exactly where we are and where we are going. I highly recommend them to anyone thinking of being in private practice. Brandon, thank you so much for the feedback. And if you guys have feedback for us, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. We always appreciate getting that and knowing that the content we're providing is really on track to meeting your needs.
So Startup Nation, thank you for allowing us to inspire you from startup to mastery. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining us on the Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.